working on and the First Nations people present on this meeting. I pay my respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people and their cultures and their connections to the land and waters of Queensland. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Lisa Chesterfield, and for those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm a Director of Growth Strategy and Innovation here in a small area of Deloitte that's Monitor Deloitte, which is our design-led global innovation practice. So I'm a former fashion designer turned human-centered designer, but I'm also a serial entrepreneur like all of you on the call today. I've got 5 startups under my belt that I've grown and exited all very differently. But at the moment, what I love doing is I specialize in helping businesses and government improve today and invent tomorrow. But what I really specialize in is accelerating business growth while positively impacting the quadruple bottom line. So I'm really proud to be part of the team here today to tell you a little bit more around our program. The way it's going to run is today we're going to share some key details that we've had a brainstorm session that we think you would like to know, but we have definitely allowed time at the end of this for your questions and conversations. So before we dive into the agenda, and I share that with you in a moment, I'd love to ask you, Sarah, to introduce yourself to our new friends.
Hi, everybody. For those that I don't know on the call, I'm Sarah Smith, the Director of Startups, Scale-Ups and the Precinct within Advance Queensland, which is the Queensland Government's innovation agenda. Super excited. We were hearing a lot from stakeholders that the missing piece of the puzzle in terms of support was around the scale. So first time that we've done something like this, really exciting. It's our inaugural cohort. I'm thrilled that there's so much interest already. We have no doubt it's going to be a competitive process for the lucky people that get in, but really grateful that you're spending the time today to learn a little bit more. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. And so in order to get the first cab off the rank, I will ask Emma, who is my partner in crime here at Deloitte, who will actually take us through today's agenda, and then we'll get straight into an overview of Ignite Plus Scale. Over to you, Emma.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa. Well, lovely to have all of you on board this morning for our session. So I'm Emma Megakis. I'm a senior manager in our Global Investment and Innovation Incentives team here in Brisbane. So what that means is we help businesses that are looking to attract investment and access government funding and incentives. So I've worked at Deloitte almost 9 years. Before my current role, I helped out in our private team, so working with small, medium family owned and privately owned businesses. So it's wonderful to be able to be part of a program such as Ignite Scale to help businesses in this space with their scale up and growth journey. So yeah, looking forward to running through the session with you this morning.
Thanks, Emma. Do you want to take us through the agenda?
Can do. Thanks, Lisa. All right, so we've got a pretty jam-packed agenda this morning. We know that we've got a short, sharp 45 minutes with you all, so we know that you're all busy working in your businesses. So first of all, we're going to go through an overview of what is Ignite Scale. Then we'll talk about the Upscale Intensive Lab that we'll be delivering in February. Then we're going to talk about the extra special inclusions that are included in Ignite Scale. Talk briefly about the participant journey. We'll go through a little bit of an overview of the EOI platform. We'll talk briefly about how to apply and next steps and where to get support, and then we'll open to the floor for questions. So feel free to pop any questions in the chat as we go if you've got anything while we're speaking about things, or hold your questions until the end and we'll cover them off then. All right, so first of all, what is Ignite Scale? So Sarah touched on this briefly in her introduction about Advance Queensland and what they do, and really seeing a need for a program like this in the market. So Advance Queensland has identified this gap that once businesses are in that early stage of growth, that there is not always the support as they are on that scale-up journey in the next phase of growth. So this is where this program has evolved from. So Ignite Scale is the new initiative offering that Advance Queensland has in partnership with Deloitte to offer bespoke, agile and advanced scale-up support to Queensland's most ambitious and innovation-driven businesses. So the objectives and goals of this program are to provide Queensland's high growth and innovative driven enterprises with tailored support to reach full potential. We are looking to help the Queensland Government and Advance Queensland attract and retain more innovative businesses staying in Queensland. We want to help accelerate business growth, propelling innovative businesses to the national and global stage, really thinking about that scale-up journey from where they are now to where they want to be. We want to help increase the value of capital invested in Queensland and in those innovative enterprises and increase high-value knowledge economy jobs and ecosystem participation in priority cohorts and industries. So that's a little bit about the background of the program. Now we'll talk specifically about what participants receive. So participants will be going through an application process, which we will talk through a little bit further in through the session. But essentially 30 high potential scale-up companies will be invited to participate in an in-person upscale intensive lab. Now this is the first formal event of the program. And so this will be a 3-day lab to refine business capabilities, develop scale-up strategies, and make global connections. That will be held at the precinct in the Valley with Advance Queensland. And from here, a selection of the top 10 most scale-up ready businesses will be then invited to participate in the full program over the next 10 months. So that full program offering includes masterclasses, access to Australian international trade and investment connections, both through the Deloitte network and the Advanced Queensland network, mentoring, specialist deep dive coaching, ecosystem events that will be held at the precinct with Advanced Queensland, and then the business showcase and graduation event. Now, for those businesses that aren't selected in that top 10, the remaining 20 will be invited to receive 10 months of mentoring and coaching to help refine those scale-up strategies. So everyone gets to participate in the Upscale Intensive Lab, and then depending on which stream you're allocated to and selected into, then you will have slightly different offerings from there. Now, the big thing on this slide that we want to highlight is the eligibility criteria. So businesses must be Queensland registered and headquartered and must meet 4 out of 5 of the below criteria. So as you can see on the screen, first criteria is to be driven by innovative products and or services. Second one is to have a well-established market for the innovative product and or service. Third criteria is to be in advanced growth or early scale-up phase and have or be developing a scale-up strategy. Now this, we will help you through the program in refining those scale-up strategies as well. Criteria number 4 is have generated revenue of between 3 and 50 million in the previous or current financial year, and then achieved average 3-year growth of more than 20% per annum. Now that can either be jobs or growth. And so, yeah, just reiterating again that it's at least 4 out of 5 of those criteria as well. Okay, now I will hand back to Lisa, who's going to talk us through a bit more around the mentoring and coaching aspect of the program.
Thanks, Emma. So I'll talk about the mentoring and scaling, but I'll also give you a double click into the Upscale Intensive Lab, because that's part of the really exciting part that that everyone wants to know. What do you actually get? What's in it for me, I guess, is that question that we're wanting to answer for you. So as Emma just said, the 30 high potential businesses that come into the Scale Up Lab will be pathed differently after the Scale Up Lab into two areas. And so part of the nature of this program is we recognise that everyone's business journey and their development journey as an entrepreneur, as a leadership team that is in the throes of scaling, it's a very different experience. And so what we're doing is we're paying attention to those two streams. One, how do we help you scale your business, and how do we actually help you look at your business objectively and help scale accordingly? So the essence of the way this program is being designed is that it is really tailored and agile. So the hyper-personalized support that will be received by those top 10 most scalable businesses after the program will be supported by a whole bunch of humans that you can see on the screen as only a sprinkling. So basically, you know, no one can be an expert in anything, and I certainly don't profess to be an expert in everything. But what we do have the opportunity to do, being Deloitte and being part of a global network of amazing, talented humans, is that we can unlock the best of Deloitte for each of the businesses, depending on where they're at in their scaling journey, where their key areas of growth or where their growing pains are. Now, yes, as Emma said, we will help refine strategy, stress test strategy, but then we will also help look at, does the business model still suit as you're going through those different phases of scale up? You know, from a leadership team, there is a number of key questions that we know is going to be hyper personalized for each business. So what you'll see is that Emma and I are part of that core delivery team, and we're supported by two key partners from each of our areas of the business that also have entrepreneurial experience. So part of the way we've structured this delivery mechanism is that we've got entrepreneurs that have been there and done that. It's not just all about theory. And we then will unlock a series of mentors and coaches, and that will be matched depending on, as we said, each business's scope. And then from there, there's also secondary subject matter experts, depending on whether you're wanting to unlock, the US, APAC, or you've got your sights on the UK and Europe, and what that looks like for your innovative product or services. So that's an overview of the way we will deliver and design the coaching. But in order to do that, part of what we're planning to do is to have a running start. Now, what that running start means is that those 30 businesses that are invited to participate in the program will be sent a pre-work workbook. Now, it's not hard. You know your business already. What it is actually just giving us an articulation of the value proposition more deeply, where you see those growing pains, so that we can actually then start to aggregate those 30 businesses to go into the upscale lab. Now, on the next screen, you'll see what we've already done to get a running start from our perspective to counterbalance the pre-work that those businesses will do. Is we held a co-design session with executives from Advanced Queensland, DETSI, Deloitte, Trade and Investment Queensland, QIC, and other industry experts have contributed to what was identified as being the key topics that this program needed to address, and what an awesome 3-day program would start to look like. So what you're seeing here is some key captured topics. Now, business models and strategies for scale up, we've already touched on. We know that the business model and strategy that have got you to where you are right now in your scale up journey might not be fit for purpose to take on the world. So that's part of what we'll double click into on topic 1. Corporate structure for scale up. We know that there are always regulatory mechanisms and other legal considerations that have to be structured accordingly, and particularly when you go for global growth, there are key considerations. So part of what we would do is connect with industry experts, global video links, and other mechanisms to enable rapid learning in that 3-day intensive lab, regardless of which way those 30 businesses get pathed in the future. Everyone continues on afterwards for that 10-month program, just in 2 different streams. Growing your management team. Now, this is one that we know, being depending on what type of founder you are, or whether you even purchased a business and you're scaling that. But if you're a founder, we know there's technical founders, and I've been one of those, and there's always that FOMO of, I don't know what I don't know. So how do I grow my management team? But then also, if you're a non-technical founder, that presents a whole new set of different challenges. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, we've got some expertise that will help you support your management team, and also how you lead how you lead and incentivize and measure the contribution for your employees moving forward. Advisory boards, governance boards, and director responsibilities, right? Key mechanisms that by law we need to comply with. As an advisory board chair, I work with a lot of organizations, and quite often there are some grey zones around what you can and can't do, what you can and can't expect. How do you set them up? And also, how do you dissolve them if they're not working? How do you keep them on track? All of those key things we'll dive into. Obviously, we're not doing this for no reason. So capital raising, and the sales and marketing side of it, two beautiful equations. We need money and we need to make money. So cap raising, what investors want, investment pitches, right through to all the due diligence and term sheets that many of you may already be in different stages of cap raising. But how do we help you not dilute too early and really take into those considerations some of those things that could be needed? Then we go into value proposition and innovation horizons. Now, obviously, I've already declared my bias for this in particular, but part of what we want to make sure is that the value proposition that you've got, your innovative product or service, how does that look in the different markets that you're aiming to penetrate as you scale up rapidly? And what do your innovation horizons look like moving forward so that you've got that pipeline to support your sales and marketing efforts? What does a go-to-market strategy look like in different regions of the globe? And then also from an international company structure perspective, there's a whole bunch of key considerations, and that's significant land to navigate. And so that's that scale up support and those mentoring mechanisms on the previous slide are designed to help each business go through. So in the 3 days, we will be covering all of this and some other exciting things. I won't let too many cats out of the proverbial bag at this point, but suffice to say, it's going to be fun. It's going to be intense. You'll see the yellow bubbles on the side talk to a few different delivery mechanisms. It's not a lecture. It is an active participant. So there'll be everything from working groups, excuse me. We'll be having plenary discussions, because part of the opportunity to network and build relationships is also how we can do business and how we can also set sharing mechanisms as well. We've got keynote speakers. We'll be doing a business chemistry diagnostic on your entrepreneurial team as well, and a whole bunch of other exciting mechanisms. But that's the Scale Up Lab. And there's also a few extra inclusions. Now, Deloitte is privileged in the sense that we are the global, worldwide Olympic and Paralympic partner for the Games. So we've done this for quite a few Olympic Games so far. And in the lead up to the green and gold runway of 2032, we've got opportunity to actually share learnings as well as looking at business growth opportunities. So there'll be a webinar on that. There's all sorts of targeted thought leadership, because part of being accessing Deloitte is all of our thought leadership articles and the insights that we can share that is specific to cohorts as well as specific to businesses. We'll also create an alumni and a cohort mechanism for communicating, as you can see there on the screen. But the participant journey is pretty intense over this. We've got the EOI preparation right now. Submissions on the next screen, you'll see where we are today. Once we close submissions on the 17th of January, we'll go through an EOI review process and start shortlisting against the criteria. Now, the shortlisted businesses will be invited for an interview. And the reason for that is because we're building this on a trust system. So whatever you put in your EOI, we trust you have the backup material that during interview, we can actually double click into that. But we're not asking you to provide war and peace in the EOI platform. It really is designed to be a simple process, and Emma's going to show you that in a moment. And so in interview, we'll go through and double click into your business information and the criteria. Then those top 30 businesses will be invited to the Scale Up Intensive Lab that I've just given you a window into. And then from there, we'll get participant agreements organised. We will have a survey that will just give us information on what you want to know, and so that we can actually take that into design consideration for the final design of the program, as well as the 3-day upscale lab. The lab is scheduled for 26th to 28th of February. So we ask that if you can't come to that lab, then you may want to consider applying for this program in the future, because it is non-negotiable. We want to make sure that those 30 businesses that are there that accept into the program are available to come to that lab. Then from there, there'll be a number of ecosystem events that also form part of the program that we haven't gone into today. And then after February, then the 10-month program delivery that we shared for the mentoring and coaching will commence, and it will finalize with a graduation and business showcase event at the end of the program. And that's a rapid fly through of the participant journey. Now, I'll hand over to Emma because we had quite a few people pinging us already around the EOI platform. So Emma's going to dive straight into sharing her screen and actually give a view of how to initially get your EOI underway and what to prepare. Thanks, Emma.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So I'll just pull up our EOI platform screen so everyone can see that there. So when you click on the link to apply for the program, you'll come to our EOI platform here. So once you start your application or start to go through the platform, we have some information and details here that you can have a look at, and then we press start to commence the application. So on this next screen here, we have a series of guidelines and FAQs. This is a PDF document that you can download to have and refer to as you complete your application, so that you've got all the details handy as well. We've also made sure that in the back of this document there are a list of all the questions that are actually in the EOI application, so that if you need to take some time to get the required information that you need ahead of completing the application, then you've got all of the information there at hand. I'll just go through to next. Okay, so as you can see from the progress bar at the top, the EOI is structured in 6 different sections, from the initial about your organization, and then the 4 criteria that we talked about before around the innovative product, market establishment, growth, revenue, and the growth metrics, followed by a declaration and submission. So I will just go through a handful of these pages just so that you can see how it works in a couple of the types of questions in the format of the EOI platform. Now I'm just going to have to put some dummy data in here, so please just bear with me.
And just while Emma's doing that, I'm just letting you know we are not going through the entire process. All we're doing is showing you some key features that have already come up in a couple of FAQ questions. And so we thought we'll just quickly show you how the EOI process works. And so while Emma's populating that, what we recommend is download those guidelines and FAQs. That will give you an idea, and it also contains a list of the questions. So you can basically grab all those information that you need, prepare your responses if you want to on a Word doc. So that way, when you actually jump in, you can just complete your EOI in one sitting, and it doesn't take very long. As you can see, there's only a few areas by the progress bar. And we do have a limitation that there is no attachments allowed. And as I mentioned earlier, the reason for that is because we don't want everyone having to go through that onerous process. So we have built it on trust, and those businesses that are being interviewed will have an opportunity to provide any other further information. However, you can send a link to your website in here. So that's the only attachment that the system allows for. Thanks, Emma.
And just one other thing to point out as well. So we've got character limits on all of the questions as well. So there's no minimum number of characters, but we do encourage you to add enough information to tell us about your business and to satisfy the assessment criteria. And just as a little bit of a sort of demonstration here, I've got some pre-prepared random text generated that to show you that the box will just expand as you go through the rest of the document.
Excellent. And just to answer the question while Emma's doing that, those questions in the chat, yes, we will be sharing the slides via email after the meeting.
Okay, then we go through the growth section. So again, same thing, just fill out all the questions. And when you get to the revenue and growth metrics, so this slide in the EOI platform is a little bit different. We're asking for details of the revenue and employee numbers so that we can determine the growth rates of these. Now, this is an automatic calculation that will happen in the background when the application is submitted for assessment. So there's no need for you to do any calculations yourself. That will all be automated. So I'll just put in some test figures here. And then we're asking for a percentage of your Queensland workforce as well. Then when you get through to the last section of the EOI, you're asked to make a declaration that all of the information in here is true and correct. When you say yes, then you have the ability on this screen now to actually preview all of your responses so you can see and just double check that everything that you've entered in here is correct. Once you confirm that all the information is correct and say next, that will then submit your EOI. Once your EOI is submitted, you will get an email thanking you for submitting your EOI with some further details around timing. And then you will also get a email copy of your responses as well, so that you have all of the information that you've submitted to hand, and this is what will be submitted to the team that is assessing the EOIs as well. So yeah, nice document with all the details there that you've completed earlier. So that concludes the demo of the platform. So just give me a moment and I will jump into the
Thanks, Emma.
the slide again.
So Emma's going to highlight the key dates once again, and we've gone through the key information as we went through the platform, but we've got a couple of tips for a successful application. So as Emma just said, be clear and concise because there is character limitations. Highlight your innovation, highlight your market understanding, and be clear on your growth strategy. As Emma mentioned, demonstrate your uniqueness. Part of what we want to understand is what's innovative about your product and service, and is there a market, and is the market ready for you, or what's your thinking of that? We just want to understand. It's not necessarily that there are no right and wrong answers. We want to understand your position. The important one also is to share your business growth. Where are you at in that scale up growth phase, and do you have the 3-year strategy, or is that something that you actually need support of through this program? And Emma, you probably got comments on the final one there around providing accurate revenue.
Yeah, so just on that, if you are shortlisted for an interview, we may be asking for some information just to confirm those numbers that you have provided as well. But we'll only be requesting those of those shortlisted businesses. It's not required to provide that in the initial EOI. We will, as Lisa said earlier, just take that as true and accurate for the purposes of making the assessment. But yes, just be aware that you might have to verify them later on. Okay, now we'll just quickly go through the key dates. So as we mentioned earlier, EOIs will close on the 17th of January at 5 p.m. So that gives everyone about 5 more weeks from now to review and submit their EOI. Shortlisting and interviews will happen between the 20th and the 31st of January. That gives our team and Advance Queensland enough time to have a look at the EOIs and make some assessments for shortlisting, and then contacting everyone to arrange interviews. Offers and participant agreements will be distributed to successful applicants by the 7th of February at the latest. An onboarding session, onboarding documents and pre-work and the survey will be sent around the 10th of February, and the Upscale Intensive Lab will be held from the 26th to the 28th of February next year. Okay, so next steps and support. So here is the QR code to access the EOI platform. Most of you have probably seen this on LinkedIn or been contacted by either TIQ, QIC, or Advance Queensland or Deloitte about the program. So this will take you to that same link. Key resources, the Advance Queensland website under the Ignite section of the website. If you have any program-related queries, please direct them to the Advance Queensland team. And if you have any queries or issues when actually accessing the EOI platform or submitting, please direct them to our team, and we will help you with that.
Thank you, Emma. So Yeah, that concludes the bits that we had anticipated might be helpful for you to know. There are a couple of questions, so keep the questions coming in the chat, and both the Advanced Queensland team from DETSI and Emma and I are happy to answer the questions that we can. So no problem at all. So the important thing is that as part of the broader suite of Ignite offerings that Advanced Queensland have, is that there is no co-contribution required for participating businesses in this program, which is an incredible generous investment by Queensland for Queensland to grow Queensland. I'm immensely proud of that fact. So the funding associated with this program was one of the questions that's been asked. So whilst there is no co-contribution and it is a fully funded program, the question that it looks like has been asked is, if we're successful and go through the program, how we expect it to execute. Is there an expectation that we secure investment independently outside of the program? Once again, we recognise that each of the businesses that come in are going to be at different stages. There's no expectation, because no one can force you to sell off part of your business and dilute your business by taking on investment. What our goal is to get you in a position where you are best set up for success through this program, to help you with those areas that you might not either have access to or might not have the funding to gain broader support, global reach, create connections, gain expertise, whatever that aspect is. So from an expectation perspective, no. Would we do everything possible to connect and set you up for investment? Yes, but that depends on whether you already have an information memorandum and you're actually needing a more broader strategy, or whether you actually are still in the phase of preparing your first information memorandum. You know, scaling up is a rapid process, and things happen really quickly, and there's a lot going on at once. So part of it also is calming the farm and getting a new strategy for that scale up, so that you don't burn out and your business doesn't break as you grow. I hope that answers that question. And the other question I can see here is, oh, great. Glad we answered that one. The other question I can see here is, out of the 4 out of 5 eligibility criteria, are they weighted? Okay, great question. And there was significant conversation from all parties as this program was in the early stage of development. And we determined that no, they are not necessarily weighted. We do need them to be addressed or to be satisfied with eligible elements of the criteria, because without it, there are other funding pathways that would be more appropriate for the businesses. This one in particular is for those businesses that are, it's someone who's pre-concept, pre-rev. It's not going to be the right program for you. And there are other mechanisms in the market. The whole reason this program has been designed and is being offered, because there was a gap that was identified in the market, that after you go through all those others, or after that certain business life cycle is entered, what support is there to help people take that next hockey stick jump and to get that next lockstep in value? So that's why it's only 4 out of the 5, and it's not a hard 5. And the question in particular is asked around the 3 mil revenue, and is that essential? If you can satisfy the other criteria, then we would take that on a case-by-case basis, as we are doing with all of the applicants. There is no bot sitting at the back of this that's going to determine, oh, you don't qualify, you don't qualify. Each one will be assessed by the team. And the reason for that is because it's a hyper-personal program, and each business's journey is different, as we've said. And we also recognise that there are some businesses that might be poised to jump, but aren't quite meeting in one of these key eligibility areas. So therefore, that's why they'll be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Is it helpful if we've successfully executed on one of the other Ignite programs? I will always say that benefiting from these programs can only set anyone up in great position, whether that's to take on further funding pathways and further support pathways, or whether it's actually to have a pre-understanding that it is a standalone program. So there is no criteria that in order to enter you have to have done other Ignite programs. But what we do know is that those other programs continue to contribute to the business journey as the business grows in their life cycle. So that's my opinion, but I might open that up. Sarah and Ian, do you have a position on that question?
Thanks, Lisa. There is no weighting on eligibility criteria. They are purely eligibility criteria. Each applicant must meet 4 out of 5 of those. There is also no weighting on the selection criteria. It's very clearly covered in the Q&A and also frequently asked questions and in the guidelines that we will be looking at each application on merit, and from that we will be looking for a demonstration of how the business is going to achieve its outcomes from the work it's doing now and where it's come from, what it's done in the past. But we will be looking at how it will benefit Queensland. So be very clear about that, and that will include such things as priority sectors. It may also include benefits to society, to environment, to economics. So be very forceful in your expression of interest of the good things that this business is going to do and what it has achieved in the past. Thanks, Lisa.
And I might just jump in there really quickly and say that we do ask about what other grants or programs you've participated in. And I guess it's not a there's no deal breaker. You don't have to have, but I guess for us this is an investment. We're not asking for a co-contribution, so we really want to make sure that the people we select are going to invest the time and not pull out halfway or not give it 100%. So I guess that, you know, by having participated successfully in other programs, that does demonstrate that you have the discipline, but it's definitely not an eligibility criteria, but definitely include that in your application. And there is a question around that.
Thank you, Ian and Sarah. So we hope that we've answered that question for you effectively. There was a question here around, you know, is this program similar to the Fast Track to Investment program? The answer is no, it's not similar. The Fast Track to Investment program that's offered by Trade and Investment Queensland is not for businesses of this level of maturity. It is for businesses that are preparing for funding, that are hoping to obtain investment, that don't have an information memorandum and need support creating a quality information memorandum. And in order to do that, we actually take 2 steps back and start to look at how their strategy, the value proposition, et cetera, and those key elements, the funding mechanisms, et cetera, and also look at funding models and funding options for that particular business. So those businesses would likely, I'm not saying they're not eligible for this program, but that this program is for a further, more mature stage of business. I trust that answers the question.
I think the question that they're referring to that's still in the chat is around what we're hoping to achieve and how we're going to measure our success at the end. I did jokingly say to the Deloitte team that for the 9 of them being unicorns would be amazing. But in all seriousness, we really would like to see job growth, job creation, these businesses to secure new customers, new contracts, and that's that real high growth, that this was a stepping stone for, you know, that next level of excellence and acceleration is my goal, what I'm hoping to see at the end of it.
Because the program is so individualised and businesses at this level are so different from each other, we don't want to set a single measure across them, but we certainly will be looking for a change.
Well said, Ian. So Thank you, everyone. I'm conscious it looks like we've exhausted all of the questions so far. So unless there's any other key questions, I'd like to close the meeting today. Thank you all for joining us and having this conversation with us. Thank you to Ian, Sarah, and Emma for sharing information today. And hopefully we've given you more information, and we look forward to reading your EOIs, everyone.
And I would just do a final thank you. We also have Sean from TIQ and Nicola from QIC, who have both been part of sort of this program team and working really closely. So it is a whole of government approach to this Ignite Plus scale program. So they're online, and I know that you may have had some reach outs from them directly. They've got their teams working hard to make sure that this gets out to the right people. So thank you.
Great call out. Thank you, Sarah. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Thank you very much to everybody for being attentive, coming along, making that effort. It's really terrific. Thank you to our wonderful partners in the Deloitte team. I believe you are going to pin this particular recording. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, Emma will share.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. All right. Have a fabulous week,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.